How's it going, everybody? The Mythical Pickle here, and welcome back to another Fallout 4 video. As you journey through the wasteland, gathering supplies, stomping on rad roaches, and trying your best to not get mutilated by the local fauna, there's always that lingering thought in the back of your head. This could be a lot better with bubbles. Wait a minute, is that just me? Yep, that's right. Today we will be answering the question you all have been contemplating. Can you beat Fallout 4's Far Harbor with only a bubble gun? Now without further ado, let's lay down some ground rules for the challenge run this time around. To start off, we have some standard rules that are likely to be seen in future challenge runs. That is, no companions of any kind aside from quest mandatory ones, of course. No use of power armor for any reason aside from a quest requirement. Weapon bash is allowed if absolutely necessary, but to prevent any kind of reliance on it, the basher perk is off the table. I must stay in character with all dialogue choices and fraction decisions. And last, but certainly not least, I must beat the main quest. Now for our more unique rules. Considering what the challenge is based around, I of course will only be able to damage foes with the globalizing nucleator, aka the bubble gun, which blows a very large and comically powerful bubble around the enemy that lifts them into the sky and eventually pops, potentially leading to massive amounts of fall damage. And as great as that sounds, there are quite a few major drawbacks that we'll be forced to tackle throughout the run. Now, as for the armor restrictions this time around, since there really isn't anything I could think of that would fit the theme of a bubble blower, we'll only be restricted to Far Harbor related armor types, such as trapper gear, hunter pelts, fisherman habiliments, and so on for this particular challenge run. And just like my last Fallout 4 challenge run, we will be running a few mods to help the game function a little smoother, as well as match the theme we have set. I made it a point to only pick mods that will in no way make me overpowered or render the challenge useless, but rather make the challenge feel a little more fresh and engaging. Now, wasting no more time, I decided to take the classic Nate look for a spin, as it had been quite a while, and plus the looks really don't matter this time around. But you know what does? Our character's name. So I spent every single brain cell and spun every last gear I had to formulate the perfect name for our bubble blowing badass. Oh yeah. Perfect.
You forgot the pickle!
Now I will need to carefully pick the special skills our bubbler will master. And because I had no idea what to expect from this particular gun, I decided to focus on endurance for as much health as possible. And I put a little bit into charisma as well, as I could foresee quite a few speech checks in my future. And finally, a very high intelligence, as I wanted to gain experience as quickly as possible, considering Far Harbor is considerably shorter than the base game. And while these stats did prove useful in their own way, I will sorely regret not putting at least a few points into agility, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. With the setup finally complete, Bubble Bass was free to roam the Commonwealth. And what's the first thing I did? Oh, you know me too well. I beelined it for Diamond City. Not only is it useful to be able to buy and sell gear this early in the game, but this time our challenge weapon was actually located within the city walls, specifically in the Diamond City warehouse, though it was locked behind a nearly impenetrable door. Once I finally broke through, however, the bubble gun was patiently awaiting my arrival on the crate just beyond the door. Ah yes, at last, the globalizing nucleator was ours. And now, the true challenge could begin. As you may know, I tend to not like to dilly-dally, so I wasted not a second more in the Commonwealth. Heading straight for the Nakano residence, I then agreed to help find their daughter Kasumi, and took their one and only fishing boat to the mystical land of Far Harbor. Upon arrival to the beautifully haunting fog-ridden land of Mount Desert Island, I was offered a warm welcome from the Far Harbor locals.
We don't need no freeloaders.
Then I was quickly thrust into the midst of battle. But this was a welcome entanglement, as I could finally see what kind of damage this bubble gun could cause. Oh yeah, this is gonna be a fun one. After my, dare I say, expert level bubble wielding, it was high time I journeyed to Acadia, home of the Scents. So I spoke to old Longfellow, and we made our way up the mountainside, sparing no opportunity to battle every step of the way. Yeah, that's never gonna get old. Once we peaked the mountain, I bid farewell to our old friend and made my way inside of Acadia, where I then spoke to the Tin Man himself, Dima, the overseer of Acadia and looming surveyor of the island. While our little chat didn't amount to much, I found the Nakano's daughter, Kasumi, working on the floor below. But she refused to go home just yet, as she felt there was still some truth to be uncovered, and recommended I eavesdrop on Dima's top secret meeting with his advisors, as there might have been something fishy going on there. So I obliged and found out that Dima had some missing memories locked away, even from himself, hidden right under the noses of some of the other residents of the island, the Children of Adam. Upon confronting Dima about the situation and his suspiciously sudden case of amnesia, he enlisted me to infiltrate the Children of Adam's ranks in order to gain access to the terminal within, as that terminal housed most, if not all, of Dima's lost memories. This seemed a simple task at first, as I would just need to agree to join their cult and I'd be in, right? Wrong. I was instead told that the only way to be granted entry into their base was through an initiation of sorts, which consisted of a refreshing drink from a local irradiated spring, and a hallucinogenic nightmare fueled by a shadow demon that I, for some reason, decided to follow through the waste, no questions asked. After my bad trip was over, I made my way back to the culty boys, who now granted me access to their sanctuary. Once inside, I completely ignored the objective to speak to their leader Tectus, and made my way to the dungeon which housed the terminal containing Dima's memories. After slinking my way through the various lasers and obstacles, I came face to face with two robots, an Assaultron and a Protectotron. While normally this would be no sweat to take them both down, this particular bubble gun has one major drawback. It is rendered virtually useless indoors. Which, for all intensive purposes of this challenge run, makes these two robots completely invulnerable to us. So I had to think of a plan to get past them and access the main terminal. Luckily, I had just looted a stealth boy from a chest not too long ago, so I used it and attempted to sneak past the Robo Bros instead. But this is where my agility and by extension sneak skills would have come in very handy, as even being almost completely invisible, I was very easily spotted by the bots every single time. But with a job to do and a refusal to back down, I did the only thing I could do. I made a break for it.
Why are you running? Why are you running?
After narrowly avoiding the Sultron, I finally gained access to the terminal. Now, what follows here is a lot of lore development, also known as yapping, and a few short tower defense games that really don't involve any bubble blowing. So we'll skip right ahead for your sake and my sanity. Now that Dima's secrets were partially unearthed, we had to track down a few items that will serve as evidence of Dima's precarious endeavors. First stop was the Harbor Grand Hotel, which was pretty simple at first, handling the resident super mutants. But then things got sketchy once again, as I had to enter the Grand Hotel to retrieve the necessary holotape on Dima. And as we just found earlier, the so-called gun I was holding was but a harmless children's toy whenever I had a roof over my head. So I did the only thing I could do and attempted to sneak through the green bean nest. But unfortunately, super mutants, or more specifically their mutant hounds, are quite perceptive. So I got as close as humanly possible to the adjacent door and ran for it. Luckily, even as perceptive as those dogs are, they're also extremely lazy, as they gave up the search for me within just a few seconds. But I'm not complaining though, as I had now obtained one of the 3 main pieces of incriminating evidence on Dima. Now, the next one was a lot more straightforward, just requiring me to dive into the water and retrieve the nuclear reactor key which Dima hid in case he ever got tired of the children of Adam and wanted to blow their ass to smithereens. Or as he put it, help them reach division. Strange way to say detonate a nuke in their house, but alright, we'll let it slide. Now there was still one piece missing, but it should be noted that before I finally did grab the last piece of evidence, I ran into some trapper thugs that kindly handed over their weapons and armor to me without much of a fuss. And lucky for me, I was graced with the single greatest helmet Bethesda has ever bestowed onto humanity: the lobster trap.
Nice.
Moving right along then, I finally made it to the last location, Vim Headquarters, where I bobbed and weaved through countless super mutants until I eventually made it back outside, where I generously offered them a bubbly demise. Now, with most of the super mutants in a bubbly coma, I made my way to the ground floor of the building, only to find a unmarked grave containing a holotape, indicating it was the original Captain Avery, leader of Far Harbor. Apparently, Mr. Servohead thought it would be a good idea to kill Avery and replace her with a synth from which he could keep tabs on the people of Far Harbor. Apparently, he did this to ensure peace between human and synth kind there. I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that that probably wasn't the best move. With all of the evidence collected, I returned to Dima to deliver the bad news. After a few very obviously faked headaches, Dima understood what he had done. But he asked if I could keep it a secret, as it would cause far too much backlash on the people of Acadia. Or, I guess, the synths of Acadia. And he was right. If I was to just outright tell the people of Far Harbor about Dima's evil choices, Acadia would surely be torched to the ground. So, before I could break the news to any of the people there, I had to get on their good side first. To do that, I started by helping avenge every last relative a local named Cassie had lost to the monsters of the fog, which was a whole lot. But I took this as a very welcome change of pace, as it was a great opportunity to unleash my inner bubble-blowing badass once more. After this, it was time for the captain's dance, which would seal my spot as a part of Far Harbor. Now, in case you don't know, the captain's dance consists of throwing random pieces of meat into a swamp and waiting for something to try and jump you. After doing this a few times, the Mirelurk Queen arose from the murky depths to avenge her fallen brethren and put right the name of the Mylark King. Well then. Now that that was taken care of, I was now an honorary part of Far Harbor, meaning I should be capable of swaying the people there from trying to destroy Acadia. But just before I dealt with Dima's issue, there was still a problem festering in the core of the island: the Children of Adam. At this point, the Children of Adam haven't been too much of a threat to the rest of the islanders, but I did some investigative work to ensure it would stay that way. And to nobody's surprise, after exhausting the dialogue of their leader, Tectus, two things were for certain. The Children of Adam were in part responsible for increasing the toxicity and reach of the fog that encompassed the entire island. And, more importantly, Tectus swore to destroy Far Harbor and forcibly convert all of its residents to the way of Adam. Now, I don't know about you, but that doesn't really sound like a good ending to me. So, naturally, I said farewell to Tectus and went directly behind his throne, whipped out the nuclear launch key, and let it rip. Running like a bat out of hell, I just barely escaped as the entire submarine base was reduced to rubble. Now, while this wasn't the nicest way to handle this situation, in the end, all Children of Adam hoped to reach division at some point, just like Dima suggested. I just kind of expedited the process a bit. Now, say what you want about this fanatic cult, but they have some pretty sweet looking marine armor, if I do say so myself. I mean, look at that. Anyways, with the Children of Adam no longer posing a threat, I returned to Dima and passed a few extremely tough speech checks to convince him to tell the people of Far Harbor about what he had done in person. Or, in synthetic form, I suppose. He, of course, agreed, albeit begrudgingly, that it was the only right course of action. So I met him down there, and the conversation was pretty simple. Dima fessed up to his crime, apologized, and my good standing with Far Harbor kept Alan from starting a full-on raid on Acadia. Then they gave Dima the only punishment Far Harbor had that was fit for murder. Can you guess what it is? I'll give you a hint. It rhymes with Smapital punishment.
Every homestead town and
Yep, capital punishment. Well, now that pretty much everything else was now settled on the island, I spoke to Kasumi and finally convinced her to return home to her parents. And I too had to say goodbye to this beautifully mysterious island I called home for 5 hours and 59 minutes. Upon arriving back to the Commonwealth, I briefly spoke to Kasumi's father, and just like that, the Close to Home quest was over, and the Far Harbor DLC was now complete, proving that yes, you can indeed beat Fallout 4's Far Harbor DLC with only a bubble gun. I hope you enjoyed today's slightly shorter challenge run. I had a lot of fun playing through this DLC again, though I did notice it had a lot more talking than actual combat involved. At least more than I remembered, which I really don't mind, but I'd be curious to see how you guys feel about it, so let me know down in the comments. And as always, if you did enjoy the video, go ahead and hit that like button, and if you're new here, consider hitting that subscribe button as well, so you never miss another absurd challenge run like this one. Also, if you guys have any ideas on what challenge runs I should do in the future, drop a comment down below. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day, and as always, remember to smile.